and we will get this party started. That guys, if you want to share it, tell a little bird, please do. Like I say, this is a topic that a lot of people won't step into. I'm excited to have Dave with us. We're going to talk about faith. If faith is a part of your life, do you incorporate it into your social media presence? Do you share it? I am a proponent of doing just that. Faith is a big part of my life, and many of you who have been following me probably see that I frequently share my faith. But I thought, for so many, I get people asking me about it all the time. They're like, is it okay to do it? Is it, why do you do it? That kind of thing. So I thought we'd just have a conversation. So I want to introduce Dave to you, though. I met Dave on Periscope. How long ago do you think, Dave? I mean, a couple of months?
Oh gosh, I have no idea.
Maybe?
Like 3 months, 2 months? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, no more than a couple of months. I didn't know Dave prior to Periscope, and which is another one of those relationships that, has spawned through Periscope. So many people I have come into contact with, formed collaborative relationships or done business with people on Periscope that I would have never had an opportunity to connect with outside of that medium. So I'm really excited about Periscope. But let me just give you a little background on Dave. Dave is a previous pastor. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And right now, though, he's an entrepreneur. He helps individuals and organizations turn their online frustrations into marketing and communication strengths. He is also the host of the Church Marketing Podcast. And so even though he's kind of shifted direction and going in some new directions, more specifically as an entrepreneur, he has absolutely still kept in the faith or kept his toe in the faith space because it's a part of who he is. So I'm just curious, Dave. I know I have my own take on it, but what do you think about people as it relates to faith on social? And if it's a part of who you are, do you think it's okay to share it on social media?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it all has to start off with there's not like a right way or a wrong way. There's the way that you lean into. And I think it's going to be different for everybody because there's different topics that we all talk about. You have a different platform than the next person, and you talk about different things than somebody else might. And so you kind of have to find that balance. But just starting off, like, should I even consider it is such a difficult question because, I even saw a tweet go back out. Someone replied to one of the tweets that we had sent out and just kind of had said, yeah, if you only want to do business with people of that religion. And I was just like, it just proves that it's a conversation. For me personally, which is the only person who I can really speak for, I think it's a huge part of what I do, but I kind of adopt the Switchfoot mentality. So I don't know if you know the band Switchfoot. They had a huge hit back in the early 2000s. Meant to Live, and it wound up going really, secular. They had grown up in the Christian industry. And when you ask the lead singer, John Foreman, about it, he says, look, I don't think there are Christian songs and there are non-Christian songs because there's not a Christian desk or a non-Christian desk. And so obviously, if you haven't been able to tell, like, I'm a Christian, I believe in Jesus. And I kind of adopt that in business as well. I don't think that you can be a Christian entrepreneur or a non-Christian entrepreneur. I think you just are. And one of the big things that I've struggled with, Kim, especially with Periscope, is trying to find the right words along with the right balance to help people understand, where it is I'm coming from. So, just to give you an example, one of the things that I'll say is, like, you can't determine your worth and your value based upon how many followers you have or how many people buy your product. And really, that's coming from my belief in who Jesus is, right? Like, so as a Christian, what I believe is that Jesus showed me how much I was worth by dying on the cross to save me from my sin. And, like, as a Christian, that's at the core of everything. So when somebody unfollows me, it's like, I still believe in Jesus. My worth hasn't changed. But how do you convey that to somebody who doesn't necessarily believe in Jesus or might not have that understanding? And so, I try to find ways of explaining it, and usually it makes its way into the conversation, something like this. So, guys, here's where this comes from. I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus, and basically what Jesus did for me is where I find my worth and my value. Now, whether or not you believe in Jesus, I've quantified it down to you can find your value in what people are willing to do for you, how far someone's willing to go on your behalf. That's where your value is. And so I try to make the connection, but it is a tough thing to toe. But I think for me personally, like I can't stay away from it because it's so foundational to the things that I teach on and the ways that I help people.
Well, for me, it all is centered in being who I am, and it's such a critical part of my life. I grew up, my dad was an elder in the church. My mom played the church piano. We were in church every time the church doors were open. And so it's such a part of who I am that when I really started to embrace who I was, it wasn't about trying to offend somebody else. It wasn't trying to, say, hey, I have the only religion out there. It wasn't about, trying to alienate people from a customer standpoint. It was about just being authentic to who I am and what I care about. And then, letting that fall where it may and being okay with that. So you do have to be okay with that because you can encounter people who don't believe the same way. Or, I've always been really respectful of other people's belief systems. Just because I believe a certain way, doesn't mean that you need to believe the way I believe. I'm not that person. So I really want to, acknowledge and be in a space where, people don't have to believe the way I believe. It's totally okay. But I do share my faith on social media pretty openly about, I'm very open about it. And I think that by virtue of that, I don't think I've really tried hard not to alienate people because of it. So, I'm sure, in fact, I know I do. I have customers who are even atheist, and that's okay. I'm not trying to, just by sharing my faith, I'm not trying to convert somebody. I'm just coming at it from my space, from my center is based in my faith. And so for me, it's kind of been just one of those things, but yet it's such a sticky topic for so many people. They're afraid to, step out there. And I would just like to encourage people that, are faith-based not to hide that. I don't leave God at the door of my business. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be, I hate to a Bible thumper or a evangelist or, whatever. You don't have to be that type of entrepreneur. But if you do care about God and God is a part of your faith, or maybe it's some other faith. I'm just, coming at this and speaking from my position and my faith, but whatever your faith is, whatever your belief system is, you don't have to shut that out of who you are and how you engage and interact on social media. At least that's my take on it.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I've noticed, and I would be curious if this has been your experience too, as you do put yourself out there, I need to say this, you recognize something very, very important in that it will be a turnoff for some people. Okay. So there will be some people, they're like, oh, that person's Christian. Okay. I'm not going to listen to him. Oh, that person's a Muslim. Okay. I'm not going to listen to him. And that's going to happen, but that could happen, with religion. That could happen with how much money you make. That could happen with, unfortunately, it could happen with your race. It could happen with any number of things. So the fact that, we get stuck inside our head, if I say what my religion is, it's going to turn somebody off. Well, just by getting up and walking outside the door, you're going to turn somebody off. Yeah. They're going to look at you and they're going to make some sort of a judgment. So you recognize something very important there. And we just need to remember that. But I've been amazed at how awesome people are when it comes to respecting me and honoring who I am once I've put that out there, because truthfully, the people who I really like working with, whether or not they believe what I believe, they're cool with me, they enjoy me and they enjoy my voice. And I could say, I really love, I don't know. I could have a whole bunch of Apple fans and I could say, I really love Microsoft. And they'd be like, oh, that's cool. I don't, but whatevs. And so people, and the other thing that you're leaning into big time is that it's part of who you are. And when you lean into that, you give people a greater context for understanding your story. And that's ultimately what social media is about, right? Being social, sharing your story in a way that allows other people to kind of see who they could become, a year or 2 years in the future, as far as like growing and building methodology or whatnot. It gives them a greater context for understanding how you became who you are and what you've achieved, what you have so far. So I really like both of those ideas, but people are just cool. Like, I don't think I've run into anybody that's called me out and been like, Jesus lover or anything, and like wouldn't follow me.
Yeah.
It's other stuff.
Yeah, I don't think that's happened to me either. And I think, again, it's just about that authenticity and being true to who you are and being okay with that. I mean, that at the root of true social media success, I don't care what you care about, what you're passionate about. That is the, like you said, you could say, I love popcorn, or I love Microsoft, or I love God, right? It doesn't really matter. Somebody is going to be turned off by that. Well, I don't like popcorn. I don't like Microsoft. So they're going to unfollow you based on certain things. I personally am a big proponent of you attract what you put out there. And I think if you're truly authentic to who you are, what you stand for, it's not about attracting, Christian customers. That doesn't even enter into it for me. Yeah. It is about, being a positive voice, being authentic to who I am and what I stand for. And then letting that be an attraction, a pull thing for people who may not believe that like I do, but they at least feel that I'm authentic to what I believe in, Really big on, again, valuing other people's belief systems, because I know, I'm not out there trying to push and say, guys, you got to believe like I do or else, that doesn't even enter into that in my equation. I don't believe that at all. But I do believe that you can authentically have a relationship with God, whatever your God is, and you can share that as a part of who you are on social in a way that feels comfortable to you. Because I think a lot of people are uncomfortable talking about this. It's kind of like politics, right? We don't talk politics on social media. So people are like, they're reluctant to, embrace their faith and be okay with sharing it because they're afraid they're going to offend somebody. So, I think that's the key, is just being, realizing that it is a part of who you are, and then being okay with that. And then, it's just like anything else, guys, like Dave said, you could say you're like Microsoft. You can't please everybody. You just can't. Doesn't matter what you put out there. There's always going to be somebody who doesn't like what you stand for. And, it just is what it is. So specifically, Dave, why do you think, though, that some people, I've talked about a few things that Mark says he loves to talk about politics. Oh, boy, I always get a little I'll share my faith in a heartbeat, but politics, I'm like, ooh, that makes me nervous. But why do you think people shy away? What's your gut on why do you think people shy away from sharing their faith?
Well, being a pastor in the church as long as I was, I'm still ordained. So if anybody out there wants to get married, give me a call. I'm licensed, but I'm still ordained and everything. But when I was actually on staff as a pastor, there was something that I learned. I used to actually talk a lot about politics, and what people don't know is that I'm very interested in politics, a lot less now than I was before. I've got kids and I've got my own business, so I've got things, taking up my mental space, unlike it did, back in 10 years ago. But I'm very interested in that, and very quickly in the church, I realized that navigating religion and politics were both difficult for one reason, at least what I've been able to quantify, and it's that there's two things that everybody is an expert at. Everybody's an expert on what they believe politically, and everybody is an expert at what they believe religiously. There's just this thing that no matter what our history is, no matter how much education or lack thereof that we have, everybody kind of maintains this expertise on what it is they believe, and it's as a result of their life. And nobody can really argue with their experiences, so you feel justified in the things that you believe. And so I think people shy away from those things because either they don't like confrontation, or they don't understand what it is they necessarily believe enough to have a conversation with somebody else. And I think there's a third one. And the third one is they just don't want to get into an argument with somebody who just won't let it go. Like, we all know those people who just won't let it die. You can have a healthy conversation, but they're the ones still pigeonholing you as like, that's the person that I have the political or the religious conversation with. And like, I don't want to be that game. Like, I still want to enjoy bowling together. So, you just kind of stay away from it from that. So I think that's the primary reason that I found people shy away from it, is because no one wants to step on anybody else's toes of expertise. The thing that I've kind of leaned into is the thing that has kind of made it difficult for me as a pastor. So now switching hats from like non-pastor, now I'm putting on my pastor hat. As a pastor, you really are the one who understands scripture, not only of your religion, but other religions as well. You understand the history. You really are an expert, so to speak, but people don't really want to hear that expertise. And so you figure out ways to kind of like come roundabout at it. And as well as I do, Kim, like, if you can get somebody to land on a truth on their own rather than you telling them, like you lead them to drink water and then they drink, then it's going to land a whole lot easier.
Their idea, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. And so, a lot of times you hear what's okay for you is okay for you. What's okay for me is okay for me. And that drives you nuts as a pastor, because it's like, well, no, I actually, have studied this for the last 10 years. You are just kind of coming up with what you believe. And so again, that's just my pastor hat. Now I'm going to take that hat back off. I lean on that understanding that people have when I start incorporating in my business. And I take it less of I'm an expert in something, and I look at it more as a respect of something. People kind of come at it from the idea of, hey, as long as you respect what I believe, I'll respect what you believe. And so that's how I
feels that way, though, right? I mean, that's the way
not everybody does.
Yeah, I mean, but I think that's the problem. A lot of people get worried that because they put something that they believe out there, that they're passionate about, that they're worried that somebody will say, well, you believe wrong, or they'll have to face that negative conversation, and or have to defend their position on it. And a lot of people are uncomfortable with that. So let me ask you a tough question. Do you think that there is, and I may be really stepping into it, I'm just telling you guys, when we decided to do this topic, I was like, this is kind of one of those topics that's a little bit, nobody talks about it. So I'm like, I think we should just talk about it and see what other people think. But do you believe that, and this is I'm going to see if I can say this correctly, that there has been a step back in so many spaces from people as it relates to their faith, and they are not maybe as passionate about their faith as maybe they once were, or have been maybe at some point in time. And yet the flip side of that, like, I'll just compare it to politics. There's so much passion about, somebody made a comment about, some people aren't experts about politics. And I would agree with that, but that doesn't mean that they don't believe they are. When somebody takes a stand on something that they believe in very passionately, there seems to be more passion around politics, I guess is my question, than there is about faith. People are more willing to say, oh, I'm right about, Hillary, or I'm right about, whoever, rather than saying, hey, this is how I believe. And, they're maybe not as passionate about the faith as they are, and not as willing to take a stand around their faith as they are about things like politics or Microsoft versus, IBM or something.
I think
it's the same thing. It's something you're passionate about. What are you willing to go to bat for? I mean, that's kind of what I'm asking. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think you're actually right there. I think you hit the nail on the head. There is this, religion is a little bit more difficult to quantify in terms of the way it impacts your day-to-day life. And if you look at somebody okay, let's talk real quick about Donald Trump. If you look at somebody like Donald Trump, what he says is very easy to quantify. Like, he doesn't beat around the bush. He comes out and says what he wants to say, and he's unapologetic. Now, that rubs some people the wrong way. It rubs some people the right way. But it's very easy to know, at least in theory, what it would mean to go to bat for Donald Trump. Whereas it's a little bit more difficult, especially if you're newer in your faith or you don't have, the background and understanding your faith as maybe some others. It's harder to necessarily quantify what faith actually means on the back end. And so it's harder to go to bat for it. And so, I'll get theological here just for a second, just for a split second, and hopefully I won't lose anybody. But my theory as to why Donald Trump is kind of where he's at in the political scene right now, my theory is that if you look at, back in the day, for those who don't know, Jesus was a Jew. And when Jesus came to earth, Jesus, the Jews thought that Jesus was going to be, like the president, like super in power, set things right, all the things that they had done to them, all the trampling on, they thought that he was going to set it right. And so it was really hard for them to go to bat for Jesus when he came and wasn't at all what they expected. Now, flip side, you look at somebody like Donald Trump and the right, and the right, a lot of people feel like they've been walked on. They feel like they've been trampled on. Like, whether or not policies have changed what they believe, it's very easy to quantify and say, this Donald Trump is saying the things that I've felt over the last 3 years. So it's easy to get passionate about somebody who's advocating for the things you feel, the voice that you feel like you didn't have. And I think that's why it's easier for us to go to bat politically, is because people give us an active voice that we can listen to and identify with and agree with, rather than religion, which is often relegated to an old book. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to just tag that real quick and say, but what if as Christians, we did the same thing? What if we led with a voice and shared a message and we're okay with sharing? Then, people would identify with that, would, share that, would start to feel like it was okay to step out in faith, kind of. But I am totally in agreement with you. And I think every politician out there needs to take a big page out of Donald Trump's book, regardless of what you think about him. Mm-hmm. And I'm not advocating one way or the other. I said I wasn't going to get into politics. But what he is doing extremely well is being authentic. He is being who he absolutely, truly is, authentically. He doesn't give a flying flip. Who cares what he says? He is playing no political games in the sense of, I got to say the right thing or I'm going to get slammed by the press. It's just one of those things that I do have to admire that in him. And I think, again, from the standpoint of all politicians, I would love to see politicians get on blab and actually engage and interact. Everybody's so afraid of, actually coming out with what they truly think and make a stand on that. They give lip service to all this stuff, but the reality is that I think you're exactly right. I think that's exactly why Donald Trump is resonating with people, because he has a voice. He's saying a lot of the things that people have felt and been frustrated with over the past, 6 years. Same, I think, though, with faith. If we, stepped into our faith and we're okay with sharing it, I think that other people would be more open to stepping into that voice as well. And again, it doesn't really matter what faith you are. You and I are Christians, but it could be any faith. It could be anything, honestly, that you're passionate about. I think so many people are scared about really, owning that voice, owning that passion. And, they're afraid somebody else they're not going to like me. I'm going to lose followers. I'm going to lose friends or fans. And yet, so they kind of sell a little bit of themselves for that.
Well, okay. So on that point, you've got me thinking a little bit here. It all depends on how you incorporate it and the balance that you strike, who it is you're trying to serve. So let's make this really easy for everybody to understand. Let's just say you're a clerk at Target. Now, a clerk at Target, it wouldn't necessarily be, the right balance to strike and after every single thing, you say, Jesus loves you and God bless you. Like, it's just not the right environment. And nobody would fault a Christian for not saying Jesus loves you and God bless you every time, somebody checks out. But there is an element of, well, if that's not necessarily the appropriate interaction that people are expecting, so what would the appropriate interaction be? And then coming up with how does being a person of faith make its way into this one transaction of my life? Now, here's the other side of that, not the other side, but how, I'm evolving it. If you were somebody who did nothing but talk about Apple products, you shouldn't be surprised if the only friends you have are people who are Apple fanboys, right? Because everybody kind of gets tired about hearing you talk about how awesome Apple is, and likewise IKEA, or put in whatever it is. There's a balance, right? And so I love Apple, and I throw jokes in there tongue in cheek. But on social media, I'm not filtering everything through the how do I work my love for Apple into this. I'm filtering it through, is Apple an appropriate comment to make in here? And that's kind of the way that I approach my business. I'm always looking for opportunities because as a Christian, I believe that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And so I'll put it out there in a way that's relevant to what I'm talking about. I don't try to squeeze it in and alienate myself from the conversation that I've created. And I think it's finding that balance. So replace religion with, smart water. I got this because it was just at the airport. You got some people who swear by it and they'll look down on you for drinking Aquafina. And so, or Fiji, right? Some people swear by Fiji water. So like, it's all about the balance. And how is this the right moment to advocate for something that you're passionate about? And does it fit? Does it bring value?
Yeah. And I love that you tied that into just everyday things, right? I think that's the key. For me, I don't get on my bandwagon, my faith bandwagon every day and say, thump my chest and say, that's not my intent. My intent is, because it is a part of me, I try to share it in a way that is authentic and maybe blesses somebody else in some way. So, but yet I think that's the key, is finding that balance. You're exactly right. But I see so many people afraid to even mention faith because they think it's one of those things that, they should keep separate. Well, quick question. What about businesses that don't have a face for their company and are speaking more as an entity? My favorite, of course, is Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is unapologetically, of the Christian faith. They close on Sundays. They give their day of rest to their employees. What do you think about businesses that, may have Christian ownership or any faith ownership? I want to be very clear about, this just isn't about Christians or, I want this to be about any faith. What do you think about that?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. I was hoping we'd actually get into that because I have a client, they're a law firm, and we just finished their website. When we did their discovery and sat down and I learned about their story, they made it very clear we operate off of faith-based values, but we're not a Christian law firm. Because the second that you get into, so any type of religious law firm, typically it winds up being associated with advocacy and constitutional rights, things like that. And they're like, that's not who we are. We're a traditional law firm for real estate and business, but we are biblically based. And so it was a really tough, dynamic to navigate because on one hand, you want those principles and those truths to come out, especially with something like justice. But on the other hand, you don't want to alienate anybody because, quite honestly, the law allows for anybody of any faith to have access to it. I mean, that's, there's things that we could say are wrong with it, but in and of itself, I mean, at the foundation of the conversation, like everybody has access to it regardless of their faith. And so the way we navigated it is we worked in phrases because they wanted to, again, not be a Christian law firm, but they wanted those truths to be there. We worked in phrases like faith-based values or biblical foundation, things like that. And after we got all done, we went back through, and the priority that they had was helping people, helping ideal people. It wasn't to make sure everybody knew they were Christian. And as we went back, we weighed everything against those two priorities. And so some things came out and some things stayed. Like one of the things we leaned into that we thought was a really creative way of leaning into the Christian faith was we went through scripture and we incorporated scriptures with famous quotes about justice. And that was one way we could pull the element in an appropriate way that allowed people to hear the word of God without feeling like they were being preached at. And I think it was a nice balance that we struck. And so I think it takes a little bit of creativity and it takes a little bit of ebb and flow. Like, I wouldn't ever tell a client, this is what we have to do. Sometimes once you see something on paper, it completely changes. So that's what we've done. Have you seen anything like that? Or have you kind of balanced that at all, or seen any businesses that have done it well other than Chick-fil-A?
Well, that's what I was just getting ready to say. Honest to goodness, I don't know very many businesses that will step into the faith. They're so afraid. Again, same thing why we're talking about this, is so afraid that they're going to alienate customers. The people aren't going to, spend money with them because of their faith or their belief system. And yet, with that said, though, there are some businesses, like, for example, not far from my home is a mechanics shop, and they are very faith-based and they make no apologies for it. And a lot of people actually go there because, now this is, again, I'm not saying this is a gimmick, but a lot of people feel that they are going to be treated more fairly. I've heard people actually say this. Well, they say they're a Christian, therefore I think I'm going to get a better deal, or they're not going to try to rip me off if I go to this particular mechanic. So, I'm not saying that they do it but that does absolutely build a trust factor for a lot of people for them. So, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You either step into it fully, and you attract people to your business around just your faith. You find a balance, which is my approach. I personally think there's a balance to be struck. Or you just leave it out totally. And, you take your chances with whatever you attract, whatever you get. I'm not saying there's any, honestly, I'm not saying that one over the other, over the third option even is right or wrong. I think you have to figure that out for yourself. I think, though, by having this conversation, I just wanted to encourage people to step into who they are. And if, faith is a part of that, their balance or their life, found that balance, essentially.
Yeah. Well, what this conversation does, and I think this, you could disagree with me if you want, but I think the most powerful thing about opening up a dialogue about this is the fact that it reveals that nobody really has it all together. Everyone's kind of figuring it out as they go. And while you or I may look at somebody else who we admire or somebody else who we think has got it all together, the second they open their mouth about something that interests us, we learn oh, wow, that's something that they're still walking through. And so if nothing else, conversations like this just give us permission to keep figuring it out, to keep allowing the conversation to evolve, to keep challenging our intentions and challenging our motives, and getting more intentional about what we do. And that's one of the things that I really, think should be said is, as long as it comes back and your intention is to follow through with what your faith commands you to do, with what your faith encourages you to step into. For me, it's living like Jesus. So as long as my intention and my striving is towards that, I know that Jesus died for my sins. So if I make a mistake, he's going to be all right with it. That's what forgiveness is for. But that's what the forefront of my mind is. In the same way, before I click post on a Facebook, I'm asking myself, is this adding value, or is this adding noise to the feed of the people who are going to see it? In the same way, is this me living my faith, or is this me hiding my faith? And if you just kind of be intentional about it and keep it at the forefront of your mind, I think you'll be surprised at how over time you'll feel more and more natural being who you are and allowing not just your faith come through, but what you find funny, what makes you cry, what makes you laugh, what you like to eat. You'll find yourself coming through more and more and more if you give yourself permission to make mistakes, to adapt, and to grow.
Well, I've said that about Periscope, being okay with not being perfect, right? And I didn't Periscope this morning because I just all transparency. And if I look a little pale and dilapidated today, it's because I am. I lost my my 16, almost 17-year-old puppy last night. And so I just didn't have, I almost got on Periscope and just said, what do you share on Periscope when life happens, right? Life happens sometimes. And so it's tough, but I just didn't have the energy for it, so, but to speak to your point is, that's what social is. Social media is life. That's how people are attracted to our businesses. They feel like they get a sense for knowing who you are, what you stand for. Even if they don't agree with you, most people respect that you stand for something. They're even if, again, if for Donald Trump, okay, I may agree or not agree with him, but I admire that he has made a stand and is unapologetic for being who he is.
Yeah.
So, I think that a lot of people feel that way. They may ultimately not do business with you because they disagree with something, but a lot of people don't necessarily care what you believe, as long as you're okay with believing something and you're okay with saying that you care about something, you're passionate about something. Well, Dave, what do you think are certain things that businesses shouldn't post as it relates to their faith?
Golly, there's probably a lot of things. Just like anything else, before I click publish, I go through and I read it through several times over to make sure my intent comes through, and you can't always control that. I do think that you should always stay on brand. And so if you're a justice advocacy organization, you need to stay on brand with that. And so I can't think of an example off the top of my head. That's what we do to try and help people understand, but I can't think of an example. But if you're a justice advocacy, you should probably stay on brand and stay in that realm. Likewise, if you're social justice. Now, if you're like legal justice, you should probably stay in that. Like, there's probably not a whole lot of commentary that you could make, religiously about overseas stuff, because you're focusing on legal justice here in the States. And every now and again, there might be some crossover. I think calling people out individually is something that you want to stay away from. I don't really see much good ever come from that. There's a lot of hurt in my life, and I have to prevent myself from calling people out one-on-one, because it really doesn't do anything other than make people have thoughts about who I am. It doesn't really do much for the other person. So I would say that's probably two things: is don't post things that aren't on brand for you, and don't call people out individually. It's just not going to be helpful either which way. What about you?
Well, I would even go so far as somebody asked about, specifics, like, what do you do when somebody says, well, what kind of, if your God's a just God, well, why does he allow drought and death and, this kind of thing? You can't win in a conversation like that, in my opinion. So it's almost like, before you know it, you'll be into this major, I believe the way I believe because, this kind of thing. Yeah. So you're going to be, because ultimately that person, whoever that person that asked that question is, they are looking for a fight, guys. They are looking for a fight, and they will bring one your way if you step into it. So for me, it's more about sharing, encouragement, letting people know that, that God cares about them, that, they're not by themselves. They're not out there on their own. I don't get into the actual, I'll call it mechanics of faith. In other words, some Christian faiths, you got to be baptized to go to heaven, right? Or you don't have to be, you just got to say I'm saved. Yeah. I don't get into that. That is a very personal belief system for every person. I'm just about sharing my faith as a whole on an inspiration and encouragement standpoint, and not trying to get into the, there's a word for it. What is the word?
Apologetics.
Yeah, right. There you go. The apologetics of, everybody's faith, because the actual
my
guts of
pastor
it,
hat.
there you go. But the actual guts of your faith can be a fight. I mean, because we all believe differently. I mean, even within the Christian faith, there's so many segments and so many different variations of beliefs. And I don't go down those roads usually. I usually just try to leverage it from an encouragement and an inspiration standpoint.
Okay, so specifically on the person who posted the question about hunger and anger and things like that, and famine and death. So just real quick, what I typically say when I see stuff like that is along the lines of, you know what, I believe God's heart breaks just like our hearts break. I don't know how it all works out, but what I know to be true about God is that sort of stuff is at the forefront of what he thinks about. I don't know how it's going to work out in the end, but God knows about it and it breaks his heart. So that's like just one quick thing that I say about that specifically. Something that I wanted to bring up before we got too far away of it, but just working it into everyday life. So I'm kind of switching gears. I hope that's okay. I was a FedEx driver. So before I started as a pastor, before I became ordained, licensed, all that stuff, I was a FedEx driver. And every single day I would see between 120 and 150 people, because that's how many stops I would have. And so when you see that many people and you're seeing them for like 7 seconds at a time, it's really difficult to bring too much into that conversation, because they're in the middle of their thing, I'm in the middle of my thing, and there's not a whole lot of room for anything else. And so what I did was every single day I used the time in the truck to pray and just ask God, hey, show me opportunities, give me opportunities to make people's days be the way you would want them to be. I mean, that's not very articulate, but that was kind of what my prayer was.
We can make a jam out of that.
Yeah, that's right. Sermon jam. So anyways, what I wound up doing, I was like, look, I only have this much time. All right. I barely have enough time to say, Jesus loves you, much less unpack what all that means if somebody has a lot of baggage around the word Jesus. So what I did is I said, you know what? Like, I think God loves smiles, because there's a lot of things that he does that's going to make us smile in the end. So how can I make people smile? How can I help bring joy to somebody's day? Joy is a fruit of the Spirit. How can I bring the fruit of the Spirit alive in somebody's life each and every day? So my goal was to make the 7 seconds that I had with each person the best 7 seconds of their day. Now, that's my goal. Whether or not that was actually what happened, that's what I did. And if I could get a smile out of somebody, that was a success. Well, over the course of seeing the same people every day for 1.5 years, 2 years, 3 years, people would always start asking me, you're always smiling, you're always happy. Where does that come from? And all of a sudden, they've opened the door for me to go one layer deeper about my faith than where I started off. And so I don't think smiling isn't a part of my faith. I think it's entwined perfectly with my faith. That's the aspect that I chose to share.
Yes.
They opened up and asked me to go deeper.
I absolutely agree. And, for me, it's a kind word. So, how can I, say something kind or, give value back to somebody? It may not be faith-based. It may have totally, absolutely nothing to do. But if I can encourage, if I can inspire, if I can, give a bit of my energy back to somebody else that's going to make a difference, then that's my goal. It's because there's people who have no light, who are living in very dark places, and you never know what a smile or a kind word can do for people. And, that is frankly, I think there's more value in that. That's a way to share our faith in a much more impactful way than handing them a Bible verse. I mean, I think that's what God intended for us. I think he intended for us to make a difference for people. And so that was actually my last question of you is, what do you share on, how do you share your faith, which you just answered essentially through that question. So guys, what we'll do is we'll open up the seat here and take a few questions. See if you guys, who wants to come in? Oh, Luann. Yay. Come on in, Luann.
Hey, Luann.
Guys, click to give her some props as she comes in. Hopefully she's still
Major
there.
Major props for Luann.
Oh, Luann.
Pulse.
Is she gone?
I don't know. Sometimes that thing just pulses over and over and over again, and you're on the other side. Luann's probably sitting there right now, like so many of us have been like, why isn't it working? I want to ask my question. I totally know how that feels like.
Seriously. Well, if there's anybody else out there that'd love to chat it up, no, she's gone. Maybe she'll come back in a minute. She has to click allow. Okay. Anybody else want to come in and chat about what your take is? Here's Jed. Yay, Jed.
Yay.
Oh, I'm frozen. Hold on, give it a second and I'll pop in.
All right. Well, we can see you, but you have a serious look on your face.
I know. That's a terrible look for me. We've got to be done with that.
I'm giving you props anyways.
I appreciate that. Hold on. There, can you see me better now?
There you are.
Okay. Still frozen.
Well, we can hear you. So
there I am. Hey, everyone. Thank you for having me on. I love this conversation. It's been fantastic. And in the comments section, it's just been firing away. So Dave's been sharing all kinds of awesome nuggets, and everybody's been chatting and sharing their info in the comments. It's been fantastic. And I just wanted to share, Kim, that we're talking about, how do you share your faith, and what does that look like when you bring it in part with your business? And when I was at Social Boom with you in Chicago, every single person that took the stage, every time that you took the stage and Terry talked to the audience and the people who have spent time and money to travel out and see you guys, there was nothing but love and caring and attention to try and help every one of those people do better in their business, do better in the goals that they had for themselves, that they were coming to Social Boom to learn about. And you could feel it. You could feel it in the room. And so whether or not you're up there preaching, I felt like you were preaching to me in terms of trying to help me and get my business, where I want it to be. So, and I felt that love, and it was genuine. It was authentic. And I know everyone else in that room felt that too. So that's how sharing your faith to me revealed itself in my perception. And it didn't have to be, preaching in the traditional sense. But just knowing that you and Terry and everyone there genuinely cared about helping those folks have better lives. And that was what it was all about. So I really felt that. And that's why I really enjoyed the conference so much, because everybody was there just to help each other, and it all came from your leadership. So I appreciate that, Kim. Thank you.
I tell you, wow, those are like words of like life for me, because that is my goal. Honestly, it's like, making a difference. That's why I get up every day. And so that you felt that was a part of, I love that we're translating this from, it goes back to what you're passionate about, guys, whether it's your faith, whether it's whatever it is, how do you translate that into your business? For me, faith is a big piece of my business, but I really appreciate you said that, Jed. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. And I want the people here that didn't get to go there to know that that's how it was coming, and that's how we felt it in the audience. So it's fantastic. So we appreciate that. And I encourage everybody who is a person of faith to let it come through in the values of your faith. Is, are you there to help others? Then go just do that. You don't have to preach to them about them helping others. Just be a leader and do it yourself. And it really shines through. So thanks again, Kim. And thanks for let me pop in.
Thank you. Well, Lori, I saw you pop in, but you disappeared. If you want to come back, just come on in. There you are. There you go. Okay. Well, she's coming. There she is. Hey, Lori.
There we go.
Hi.
Hey.
I came in just a few minutes ago. I like this topic.
Well, when I reached out to Dave and said, this is a little bit of a dicey topic. Are you okay with us talking about this? because literally, have you ever heard anybody actually talk about this subject in social media? Most people don't, right?
I think we tend to hint around it on the holidays.
Yeah.
Really, we hit it when it's popular to hit it.
Yeah.
And but other than that, we pretty much keep faith to ourselves unless something tragic happens, and then it tends to bleed out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's so sad, honestly, that it does take something tragic to bring us back, right? Mm-hmm. To bring us back to our faith. But that's true. I think that's just human nature. We get, I don't know, when you step away from it consistently and then something bad happens, you do turn back,
It's instantaneous. And I popped on right after you said that you said that your dog had passed away.
Yeah.
And I came on to say, when bad things happen on live stream, you take a moment, you breathe, and then you share what's happened.
Well, he was, we got him when my youngest son was 4. So was almost 17, has been such a big part of our family, and more specifically a part of my heart, because he was kind of my dog, even though, he was my little protector. It's been really hard to lose him.
Yeah.
But I know that he is in doggy heaven today, and he's running around. He can see and hear, and he's probably sniffing a lot of butts. So
yeah, just running around the door.
Yeah,
yeah.
It was probably TMI.
No, that's okay. No, it's okay. No,
thank you.
That, lab community just lifted me up and grabbed hold of me, and it's kept me from being in a serious depression. So
good.
It's really good.
Good. Well, thank you. Did you have a question, or did you just no? Okay.
Not really. Just
popping in. Oh, I'm so glad you did pop in. Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you enjoyed the conversation. It's been interesting to have this conversation. It's one of those things that a lot of times people just don't want to address. I loved your comment about.
I'm not sure addressed as much as just you're not sure how.
Yeah.
Somebody has to start the conversation before something tragic has to happen. So
well, maybe if nothing else, this will give people permission to say, okay, well, if they're talking about it, maybe it's okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
So some people, sometimes they just need permission, or they think they need permission to, step into something that they actually do care about, they're passionate about, they've been afraid to address. So sometimes you just hear things that are like, okay, they're doing it. It's okay. It's all right.
Yeah, exactly. Because inside the social media space, sometimes, politics and religion, it's kind of like, you really want to stay away from the politics side of things. It's just not good for business. And
that is one of those things. That is one thing I've tried to kind of stay away from. But my faith, I'm okay with standing on any day.
Okay, so real quick on the political piece, I have a post that I start sending out on Facebook and Twitter every time a political season comes up, and it's all about destroying my influence. That's what I call it, and I always say why I don't talk about politics. And basically, immediately in the article, I say I love Barack Obama, or I thought George W. Bush was the best president ever. And immediately that makes you think things about me when I say those things. And so I go on to explain why, and I incorporate my faith in there too. As an influencer, as a man of faith, as a leader, I choose to stay away from the things that are going to ruin my witness, whether it be religious or whether it be professional, things that will prevent me from having influence, because I say, look, this is not as important as me leaning into who I was created to be. Now, who I was created to be, somebody who knows Jesus, they're going to be like, oh, who Jesus made you. But somebody who doesn't know Jesus, they'll be like, oh, who you were trying to become. So that's kind of the way that I've done. But that post always is huge, at least for me. It's always huge every single time a political season comes up, because people are interested about it. I think you're right on the head, Lori. Like people just, don't talk about that stuff.
Yeah, it's and because it's the political season right now, everybody wants to know all the little things, including, just people like us who step up and we're in the public eye all the time. It seems like people get just a little bit more curious about everybody else too right now.
I love how Dave mentioned that his influence, or what he believes is his influence, is based around his faith, not his politics. And, some people get sidelined by what is their influence. What do you truly want to be known for? What do you truly care about, guys?
Yeah.
That's truly, in my estimation, that's where what you need to step into. Because so many times we get wrapped up around things that they don't matter. They truly don't matter. And, we spend so much time and energy around things that have no true value to us in the big picture. We get wrapped up around, somebody says this about us or they think that of us. What do you truly care about? And then how do you step into that versus, worrying about all the other stuff that, we are constantly, bombarded with. So I love that Dave said that, because what do you want to be known for? What is your area of influence? And, is that going to impact your influence if you, go sideways in some other direction?
Exactly.
So it's really interesting. That was such a great point. Love that point.
On that element of what do you want to be known for, I'm thinking back to high school, so I'm digging deep here. But I would much rather be known for, like looking back then, I'd much rather be known for as the person who has some wisdom and has some, foundation to my life, rather than the person who is the Christian. And the reason why I say that is because back in high school, I had people coming to me all the time, weren't Christians, had no interest in it, but my life was represented in such a way that they're like, I've got a difficult decision and I would like to hear what you have to say on it. Like, there was one person who even, this is back in 2001 when, it wasn't necessarily easy for somebody to come out of the closet. I had somebody come out of the closet to me and say, hey, I feel like I'm a homosexual. I don't know how to deal with this. You seem like you have your life together. Can we talk about this? It had nothing to do with me being a Christian or not, but that person wanted to have a very difficult conversation with me based upon the way that I had lived my life. And so I'd much rather be known as the person who has a solid foundation than the Christian who loves Jesus, because I think it opens up the door to bigger conversations than just people coming to me who just want to talk about Jesus. People want to talk about life with me rather than just Jesus. And I'd much rather talk about life because there's a whole lot of really cool people you can meet through it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, that's where you make the impact. So that's why I think that, leading with just letting your faith shine through you, not using it as a springboard to, to preach to other people. Just let your light be something that people are attracted to, so that you have an opportunity to open a door to a path that could impact somebody in a positive way. And if you get a chance later to share your faith, that's a whole other thing. But it's a total different thing than saying, okay, this is the way I believe, you should believe that way too. Just let your faith be a reflection of, and again, regardless of what your faith is, it doesn't really matter what that faith is. It is, what do you care about? What kind of impact are you going to make, and how are you going to make it? So.
Yeah, it's about walking the walk. And when we see with walk, talk the talk t-shirts when I was in high school in the 90s. But and it's something that I took very much to heart. I wanted to be the person walking the walk, not talking the walk.
Yeah, agree. Well, I say that all the time in my businesses. I don't want to tell people to do things that I'm not doing, or I don't want to, in some cases it's not always, I'm not doing it right now, but I want to at least walk my own talk. Exactly. I want to be able to say, I'm doing this or I've done that, and, you should try it. This works. I know it works. And, here's my case study or whatever. I don't want to be that person that says, I am the expert and you need to do this, but I've never tried it myself. I just didn't, so I'm huge. In fact, my whole team is always like, they know I'm like, guys, if we can't demonstrate it in our business, we're not teaching it to other people.
Exactly.
So, Well, I have so enjoyed the conversation. Dave, thank you. Thank you, Lori, for jumping in. Jed for jumping in. Everybody, guys, for listening in. Hopefully we've given some value, maybe inspired some of you to, just leverage your faith and in a way that attracts people and makes an impact rather than hiding it under a bushel somewhere and not letting it out. So thank you guys. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks for hosting the conversation, Kim. I really haven't seen anybody talking about this lately. And so I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for letting me be a part too. This was fun.
This is fun. Absolutely. Well, guys, again, thank you. And we will, we'll see you guys on social media or back here on Blab next Tuesday, same time, same place. All right, guys, take care. Bye-bye.